Hello and welcome to the Wilder podcast. I am Tom and this is Chloe.
Hi.
Now, I think we've got two rather large elephants in the room to cover before we start. First of all, we do have baby Eleanor down below us, who's 6 weeks old, and she's doing a very good job of listening and being the audience today. But if you do hear a bit of murmuring in the background, that's that. And the other thing which I think is worth covering before we go into the purpose of this introduction episode is that, we are husband and wife. And I think that, how long have we been together for? No, I know this. 10 years we've been married for. Haven't, yeah? Don't sound too excited.
This feels risky already.
But I think it's just important, the kind of things you should mention at the start. So, first of all, I think let's cover why someone might want to listen to the Wilder podcast. And I think if you're looking for a podcast that looks to cover all things wilding, rewilding, depending on which side of the fence you sit on that, sustainability, biodiversity, then you are definitely in the right place. We are going to cover more of that during this introduction episode. But first of all, I think let's introduce ourselves. Chloe, what do you think?
Sounds good.
We play with who we should introduce each other, but I think in order to avoid arguments, we should introduce ourselves. So I'm Tom Constable. So I'm a former British Army officer, got a really not very useful degree in computer games design and have done a bunch of random business stuff more recently. But having done the research into the effects of climate change and the biodiversity loss, it's one of the reasons why I'm very keen to do this podcast and our project, which we'll learn more about a little bit later. Chloe?
So what you forgot to mention is that a number of those businesses involve podcasts, of which I have done none. So you are the expert in the room here, and I am way out of my comfort zone.
Well, I have to be the expert in one thing in the household, so I'll take that.
Oh, poor Tom. Anyway, what would it be useful to know about me? So I trained professionally as a clinical psychologist and did 10 years in the NHS, predominantly working with sort of families and young people. And then I specialised in a type of therapy called Systemic Psychotherapy that actually has quite a lot of links with ecology, which is kind of interesting now. That's so this podcast is going to be covering. But I now work across a variety of different sectors, academic sector, charitable, public. But outside of work, I guess what I'm really passionate about is books. I love learning and reading and podcasts. I love walking and eating, ideally with friends and family. And what am I hoping to bring to this podcast? Well, a lot of systemic psychotherapy is about asking good questions. So hopefully that might come forward in some of our interviews with the guests we've got lined up.
And that is the crux of the podcast. We are going to be essentially, because we don't have a background in ecology, we are going to be interviewing the experts that do have that. The Grange Project itself we've taken upon ourselves to kind of be custodians of 80 acres of low to medium grade kind of old farmland in Monmouthshire, and we're looking to essentially, inverted commas, rewild it and put it back to nature. And we're hopefully using this journey that we're going to be going on as a family, there's myself and Chloe and our kids, Rose, William and baby Eleanor there as well, to speak to experts, learn from them and implement what they've learnt as we're going through. So we are novices. We're going to ask all the stupid questions, and therefore people can join our journey as we go through and learn from the people that know best.
I'm really excited because, I'm an avid podcast consumer, and now to be a part of being a podcast creator, I'm going to hesitate to call myself that in
just yet
in episode 0. But I feel that it's such a great, engaging way to learn about topics that you might not be kind of familiar with or that you just want to touch base on. And I don't know about everyone else, but I consume a lot of my podcasts while I'm out walking or while I'm driving. And it's just really lovely to be able to perhaps be connected with people over subjects that I'm so interested in learning about, and hopefully will bring some of that passion into the conversation.
So let's go into the types of topics we're going to be covering. For this, I'm going to give it back to you, Chloe.
So I'm going to briefly touch now on the 3 main areas of which the podcast is going to be themed around. And hopefully these will be of real interest to all of our listeners, but are particularly relevant, I guess, or connected to the Grange Project.
Thank you, Eleanor.
So the first is kind of that idea of rewilding, or, what does that even mean? And there's a lot of debates in this field that I think will be really interesting to cover in the podcast, which is, what does rewilding look like? Are we rewilding anything, or are we actually wilding? Are we talking here about just biodiversity and improving that, minimizing the biodiversity loss? These are all big questions we're going to be thinking about. And what does that look like for everybody, really, is in that balance between conservation and benign neglect. Where do we want to position ourselves? And what does that mean for everyone out there that has a garden or a window box or thousands of acres? What does that look like?
For me, military term is so what. Every time you think about something in the military, a mission, when you're planning it, you always think, so what, what's going to happen next? And so for me, I want to have the questions about, let's say, there's a certain type of butterfly that's we're going to try and bring back to the land. Well, so what? Why is that important? And why is that important to me as a normal Joe Bloggs on the street? what is the risk of losing all our biodiversity to the wider country and obviously globally as well? So they're the kind of questions I really care about. Strategic level, how is that affecting on a wider scale, and why should we care about this as well?
And I'm really resisting the urge to get stuck into that kind of conversation right now, because we really get trying to cover things on a high level in this introduction. But yeah, come back for more of those sorts of debates and conversations. I guess the other big subject that we're going to be thinking about is sustainability. And for us, I was thinking about sustainability for us as a family. So thinking about our home and how do we make that as sustainable as possible, thinking about our food sources. And Tom has been busy, I don't know what the right word is here, nurturing seeds, loving them.
I'm seed whisperer.
Seed whisperer.
Having not grown anything myself before, I've started the no-dig garden, and I've just only recently put my first seeds into a pot. So who knows what's going to happen there?
Judging by our house plants, not much. But, and I guess another subject that we think is really important to talk about, because it's all very well talking about, rewilding as this great concept, but actually it's also got to be financially sustainable for us as a family. So we're thinking about how do we create that income, and we're looking at various different projects. And when we started with gin, mostly because Tom likes to drink gin. Yep. We looked at honey because, again, the kids like honey, but we're also looking at various different ideas around ecotourism, like Shepherd's Hut. And if you're interested in anything to do with that, there'll be some podcast episodes that will cover off.
Yeah, and that is a sad reality. We're in a capitalist society that is ran on money. And therefore, if we want to make change, it still has to pay the bills, has to put food on the table, et cetera, et cetera. So we're not scared of approaching those topics. We're going to interview some amazing, exciting entrepreneurs doing some really exciting projects for change. And we will be very transparent in our projects. I want the Grange Project to be really clear in terms of where we're generating revenue, how we're doing it, so that hopefully it might inspire other people, assuming that we do make a success of it. And that's cart before the horse here.
And our relationship survives the process.
It will survive. We've done it. Be through worse, I should say. Yeah. Just to bring one more military analogy into this, I promise I won't do any more. But if you're fighting a counterinsurgency warfare, there's this thing called the ink spot effect, because you've got to try and influence a large area with a small amount of troops. It's like ink spreads out in water. You do that across a large area, and that allows you to drive change. And I think if we can try and achieve that, that would be a really cool goal of the project.
And I guess that's one of the reasons why we're doing this podcast, and it's actually turning out to be a more enjoyable experience than I had first thought, is because we want to share our learning so that we can help other people in their learning, and hopefully that translates into action, which if we all do a little bit of something, then hopefully change will come on a larger scale.
Right. Well, I think we're getting towards the end of this now. Hopefully you've decided whether or not you're going to swipe left or right. Carol, is that on there? There you go. You're welcome. There's more where that came from. Oh. And press the subscribe button. But in terms of where you can find us, at the moment, I think the best place to find us is on Facebook. If you just search for the Grange Project on Facebook, you'll be able to find our group and our page as well. Feel free to engage with the community there. What would be really helpful if you do see this podcast out there, it's just, although we are as bad as everybody else in the world of being Facebook lurkers and social media lurkers. But if you could get yourself out of the comfort zone, like Chloe has done for this episode, and just press the like button, or maybe put a comment on there, it makes a massive difference as to getting the voice out there. If you've got any ideas for potential guests or topics, please feel free to go to grangeproject.co.uk. There's a contact us form on there as well. That's all for me. What about you, Chloe?
I guess the only thing from me is part of what excites me about this project and about the podcast and everything is this is a journey for us, and we're really excited to share this journey and learn from everyone out there that can contribute to our understanding of these topics and can support us as we try to do something a little bit different.
Great. I'm excited. Eleanor's excited. You've done a good job, baby Eleanor. You have been staring at me, but she's doing a good job.